Alright guys, so today I'm going to be doing my out-of-box review here for the Master Grade ZZ Gundam Ver.Ka, and I just want to start off this review by just saying, wow. And yeah, it's a pretty fun kit. I mean, my experience building the kit was actually really enjoyable. I found the kit did take me a couple days to snap up, but that's because I was just chipping away a little bit at a time. I actually was a little bit busier than usual at work, where I was snapping this in my downtime there, but the actual, whilst I was building it, it was actually going really quickly for a pretty big kit and what appears to be pretty complicated. It's a relatively simple kit actually to put together, and considering that it has a really big transformation gimmick there as well, it's a little bit surprising how relatively simple the build is. So it went by really quickly, smoothly, and it's just a pretty fun kit to build. So I gotta say that's definitely points for it. It's a really interesting build, just again because of the transformation. It's not going to be so atypical as what you would expect from a standard master grade in terms of just the way things go together. Of course, everything goes together a little bit differently, so that kind of keeps you on your toes and makes the build a little bit more fun and interesting, I think. It doesn't necessarily make it more difficult by any means, so if you're really new beginner and you're thinking, oh, if it's something weird and transforming, maybe that's a little bit too difficult for me. It's not anything like that, so don't take it that way, but it's just a really pretty fun kit to build, and I gotta say, just straight out of the box, it's a kit that is gonna look really, really nice. This one thing they incorporated quite a lot into this is the gray parts inside, like the inner frame parts poking out through the armor parts, so you see a lot of that just kind of all over the kit. Not really so much on the backpack. There is a little bit of it on the backpack as well, but kind of everywhere else, especially on those red wings on the side, areas where it would be just a lot of just big wide open space with not a lot of detail on there, and there is actually some parts of that, like some parts on the legs. You'll see there's some really large parts there with not much in the way of details, but other parts they did a good job of breaking up, especially a lot of the white areas with little bits of gray poking out here and there. And of course I haven't done any panel lining on the kit at this point, but if you were to go in and do panel lining on there, it would help bring out some of those other details that are molded in as well. Again, mostly on the wings and areas like that, there is some panel lines and some little details on a few other areas, but generally it's not a super detailed kit in terms of actual panel lines on the kit, but there's a fair amount of little bits and bobs of detail here and there. As far as the colors, I think that's one of the main reasons why I've never really been so much of a big fan of the ZZ Gundam in general. I know the colors are just really atypical Gundam colors, but they just look a little bit too cartoony for such a big, bulky, massive design. I definitely much prefer the Phaz colors, the Sentinel colors that are just kind of more gray. I think it definitely looks better on this design, so definitely looking forward to painting this in some different colors. But I gotta say, the colors that it's molded in are very nice, and the addition of the little bits of silver parts in there as well was a really cool thing that I think Bandai we will probably see them do more in master grades in the future, especially Ver.Ka kits. I would assume that's probably going to be a staple of Ver.Ka kits from here on in, but we'll just have to wait and see. I hope they do keep it up. It does make the kits look pretty cool. It adds a little bit of extra little niceness to the kits just straight out of the box, so that's pretty nice. So before we get into talking about all the articulation of the kit, I want to go over some of the accessories first, because it really doesn't have a whole lot in terms of accessories. Pretty much the Gundam itself is the great majority of what you're going to be getting with this kit. So before that, I just want to say, as always, a big thank you to USA Gundam Store for supplying me with this kit to share with you guys. They're awesome, support me a lot, so do give thanks and go support them. The link to their channel, their website, their online store, is down below. You can use my coupon code there, save 10%. If you're considering the cost of this, which that's another thing about this kit, is that I think the cost is actually quite nice. 6,000 yen for the list price for this. If you use my coupon code there, save some money. I would recommend using that money that you save to buy an action base for this, because it's the one thing that it doesn't come with an action base, unfortunately. I think it would be nice if you had one, so that's just a recommendation of what you can do with the money that you save. Now let's talk about the accessories, things you get extra with this kit. So you have an extra core fighter, so aside from the one that's built into the kit, you actually have a second one which you can display separately. There's a little seated pilot figure in there, so you actually have the choice of whether you want to put the seated pilot figure in the extra core fighter or in the double beam rifle. So the double beam rifle also has a cockpit in it. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but here's just the core fighter, and you have this clear piece for the landing gear. It's actually two pieces made up, but you have some clear landing gear, so you can paint that in just gray or whatever if you want to make it look like actual physical landing gear, or if you just want to just use this for a display, keep that in clear, you can do that like that. The hatch does, of course, open up as well. You can open that up, and there's our pilot figure there inside and some nice detail. Then as you've seen, we've got our big pink beam saber effect parts for the big, huge beam sabers on the backpack. They're actually beam cannons that double as beam sabers if you take them off, but these are the 1/60 scale version beam saber effect parts, so they're really huge. They're actually taller than the Gundam itself, so those will give quite an effect. We have a couple of action-based connectors, one for the Gundam in Gundam just mobile suit mode, and one for when it's in the G-Fortress mode. And then some hand options. So on the kit there you can see I've just got the kind of closed fist options. What this is the thumb actually is on a ball joint, and then it has a joint in the thumb there which will allow you to have a bend like that. And then the fingers are just swappable fingers, so you have just fixed pose fingers. What I have on there now is for the closed fist, but you do also have a few other different options here. One other option is just a trigger finger hand for the double beam rifle, that you only have this one for the right hand, so no option of holding that in the left hand for this kit. And then you have these, which look like they would just be for open hands, but these are actually for holding those giant beam saber handles. Because of those are so big, they had to make these like special hands for holding them. So I guess if you like cut off, if you lopped off that little peg there on the fingers, which are meant to plug into the beam saber handles, cut that off, you could use these, I guess, as just like regular open hands if you want, but you have those for the left and the right. But then you have a second set of hands here. Now these are a little bit smaller, and they actually, if you put them on the kit, like if you were to put just one of these and then one of these other ones on the other side, you would notice definitely a size difference. These are definitely smaller. These are for, again, for the transformation. So when you transform the kit into G-Fortress mode, you actually are meant to use these hands instead, I guess just because they fit with the transformation better, just being a little bit smaller and more compact, like compactly tight fists there. So anyway, these are also on ball joints, whereas those fists are just plugged straight in, just the regular hands just plugged straight into the arm. These are actually on ball joints, which is a little bit different. But and then the last thing, its main handheld weapon here is the double beam rifle. So the big camera there is where one of the foil stickers are for this kit. This kit only has a few foil stickers, one for this camera, two separate ones for the eyes. So the eye stickers is actually two separate little tiny stickers, and then a couple other little camera stickers that are actually on the top of the legs, again for the transformation. So we have a couple of the silver parts in here. Now for pretty much everywhere on the kit, the silver parts, which are actually just, they're molded white and then just sprayed silver on top of that, the nubs are hidden there, except for on here, these parts here at the end of the double beam rifle. The nub is actually on the part that is actually showing, unfortunately, so you will have a little bit of a nub mark there. I really don't think that's something that people are going to really notice much, considering the silver and the white plastic underneath are very close in color. You really even have to look to notice the nub marks there. But again, we have a little cockpit here at the back, which is kind of cool. That opens up. The handle folds back again for the transformation. Some parts, other parts of this fold up and around as well. But this will just plug into the hand using that special finger grip, plug onto there like that, and then just into the hand. Unfortunately, due to its size, and especially its size on the back end, it's a little bit hard to actually get this into any poses because it's just kind of getting in the way of everything. And that's another thing that I just kind of generally dislike about the design of the Double Zeta Gundam. These big wings on the back of the arm really kind of get in the way, and I just don't really particularly like them, so just an aspect of the design that I don't personally care for. And of course, the last thing we can't forget, with this being a Ver.Ka kit, we have a big sheet of waterslide decals. Now, of course, I haven't used any of these. I'll wait till the kit is actually painted, but you can use these on here if you want. You can use them just right on the bare plastic or paint and then use them. But anyway, you have a lot of these here in white, red, and then gray. So really great details there. It's one of the nice points of Ver.Ka kits, I think, is that you have all these nice waterslide decals. So definitely put those to good use. Now let's get to talking about the articulation. The head will go up, really only about to there, but just take a moment to just notice how nice the head looks. Really great sculpting in that, and the little bit of silver there at the center of the cannon there on the forehead, looking very cool. Down to there, overall in the neck articulation, it does what you would need, but nothing too fancy, nothing too crazy. The cockpit hatch does open up, and you can see there is the cockpit of the other core fighter there inside of there with our seated pilot figure in that. Speaking of which, that's another accessory that I forgot to talk about, is our standing judo pilot figure here at 1/100 scale. I quite like the look of that. The pose, I think they went for that as a nice one, rather than like a kind of boring standing pilot figure pose. This one is a little bit more interesting anyway. It looks pretty cool. So as I was saying about the torso, because of the transformation, there's really not any articulation in the torso really at all. You can rotate it side to side, but interestingly what it does when you rotate that side to side is it moves the front skirts like that, just kind of, again, just because of the transformation. So you can kind of rotate that a little bit, but then you kind of have to readjust the front skirts there a little bit, and they're going to be looking a little bit kind of wonky. So torso articulation, not too much. Here on the shoulder, this little wing blue part there on the top moves up and down. The whole arm itself is able to go up pretty high there, all the way up to there. However, our forward and back movement at the shoulder is completely non-existent. Pretty standard articulation of the arm, rotation at the top, double joint at the elbow, and then the wrist, like I said, is just plugged straight into there, so there's no movement there at the wrist except for just rotating it. Here on the back of the arm though, these really nicely detailed wings will move separately. This whole section moves open, but again, that's kind of more for the transformation. These can also rotate, again, for the transformation, but it is worth mentioning anyway. The front skirts, as you've seen, do move, but in terms of like moving up, really only about to there, which is not a whole lot, so you won't be able to get the legs up super high, but it's enough for them to at least be out of the way. The side skirts are actually more like these side tops of the legs, because that's where they actually connect onto there. But that will move up and down, and this wing, little wing there, will move a little bit as well. Legs also move very standardly, rotation at the top. Double joint in the knee, which, check this out, it's actually quite nice. You get the first bend there, we'll bring that up, and then the second bend pulls the frame out of the thigh there, so that's looking really nice. For a big bulky kit as it is, that's a pretty good knee bend that it's getting. Not this front part of the knee there is not separating or anything, so you're just left with a bunch of mechanics there, nothing to really protect that, but it still looks pretty good, I gotta say. So once that's back straight, as you've just seen, this front part does move up and down a little bit. Here at the front of the leg, also up and down a little bit. The parts on the side, in and out a little bit there. The backs of the legs are actually a little bit more detailed than the front and look pretty nice. And then here at the ankles, albeit quite stiff, those will move side to side. Forward, not that much. Back, pretty good. Forward, back. The toe doesn't move separately at all, so you'd think you'd be able to point that toe down, but no dice for that. So in terms of getting the feet back, you're just going to kind of have to deal with that, which is not a whole lot. Up underneath the feet though, you do have some nice detail there. Not super crazy detailed, but it's enough, something to go on if you're the kind of person that does like to paint the underside of the feet. And then for the backpack, these little wings here on the side will move up and down. These little flaps here will move up and down a little bit. Up underneath there, some nice detail there with those thrusters. You'll see that more once the kit is transformed, but nice detail there inside the backpack. It's just a shame that when it's standing in its Gundam form, you really don't see that much. Up here at the top, the beam cannons or beam saber handles are just connected via ball joint, which apparently will pop out if you move them around too much, but those can be moved around a little bit. You can also open up these doors here and expose all the little missiles inside, so you've got a bunch of those, and they do look really nice molded separately in red there. Anime Janai indeed. Well, it's not going to be able to get quite as dynamic as it is in the anime. The kit is actually pretty good in terms of its articulation. I mean, considering they had to pack all that transformation in there, people were really worried about this. I mean, especially after the V2 Gundam Ver.Ka, that kit wasn't great. I mean, it looked nice, but because of the transformation, it just became not a really easy kit to pose, not an easy kit to work with. And people were rightfully worried about having that same issue with this kit, but I think they've done a really good job with it to make it still pretty well articulated, despite it being very big, bulky, heavy, and transforming. Now, heaviness was the thing that I was worried about the most, actually, to be honest. The articulation, I was sure they were going to do a pretty good job by that, and they were kind of showing that off early in showing the kit that it wasn't going to be just a big brick. They did a pretty good job of trying to pose it whilst showing us more about it. But I was just worried about the weight, because obviously very big, bulky, but I think that goes back to what I mentioned before about it being a relatively simple design, and I think that worked out really well. I don't know if they did this on purpose, but because the design in the construction of the kit is relatively simple, it's not packed with loads and loads and loads of parts, that also helps to keep the weight down, and then doing poses like this is more possible because it's not super weighted. Otherwise you just have these arms and legs just drooping down. You wouldn't be able to do anything like a pose like this. So I gotta say, pretty good job. But now let's go ahead with the transformation, shall we? And after all of that, here is its G Fortress mode. Not really convinced. I don't really think it looks very good. Nothing to do with the kit itself. I think the kit pulls off the transformation pretty well, and it's not a very difficult transformation. It's just kind of wonky. It's not near as difficult or as tricky as the Master Grade Rezel, another Master Grade transforming kit that I recently reviewed. That transformation was more complicated. This one is really not that bad. Just follow the instructions and you'll be fine. It does actually have a few more things. It does actually separate into the core top and the core base. Basically, you just pull them apart and switch around a couple little parts, and that's pretty much it. I won't really bother showing you guys that. If you're super interested, that's what they look like, separated, the front and the back half. Yeah, nothing that great. For the real die-hard Double Zeta fans, I think it's cool that they did this, but personally I would have been perfectly fine if the Master Grade would have not had a transformation gimmick and would have just had better kind of overall articulation, which I think it could have if it didn't have the transforming gimmick. The other cool thing that it does have though in this transform state is that it has some like landing gear. It's like some parts of the armor on the crotch, on the knees, and underneath the double beam rifle there, which makes up the kind of the front tip of this whole massive thing. Like some little parts there fold down and make some landing gear if you want to have this actually just like standing there. I'm not sure about how well those will actually support the weight, but I'd imagine those will work pretty well if you wanted to use those, if you wanted to have this not on action base. But I think if you're having it actually in this form, in this flying form, you're probably going to want it on action base. Unfortunately, the action base was not included. Would have been nice if that was included. I think raising up the price to 6,500 yen rather than just 6,000 yen would have been fine. If this would have included an action base, I don't think many people would have complained about that price. But let's just go ahead and get this transformed back into its mobile suit mode. So ultimately, I think Bandai did a really good job with this Master Grade. It's pretty much what you would want out of a Master Grade Double Zeta kit, I suppose. Is this a really nice kit? Yes. Is this a kit that I would recommend to fans of Double Zeta or just fans of big, bulky Gundam design Master Grades? Yeah. Is this a kit that I would recommend just all of you guys just go out and pick up right away? Not really. I mean, if you like the way it looks, then you'll be perfectly happy with the kit for sure. It's a really nice kit, and like I said, the best part for me is that it's really fun to build kit actually. But I don't know if I'd really go out and say that it's a kit that you absolutely have to own by any means. So if you think that it looks pretty cool, then definitely when you get a chance, pick one up. But I've had fun with it. So to wrap up the review, let's talk a little bit about some speculation. Now we already have the P Bandai version of this, the enhanced Double Zeta coming out with. It's just like a little bit different parts for that. It's really not a whole lot different at all. But the big question that we're wondering about, I think, is if or when we may possibly get a full armor set for this. So no, who knows if that will be a whole separate kit. I think what they may end up doing is selling it as just the full armor parts as a separate set, sort of like what they did with the new Gundam Ver.Ka and the High New Gundam Ver.Ka. They sold the HWS, the heavy weapon set, as a separate set. So I think they may end up doing something like this for that. And then after they do that, then the possibility of a Sentinel version, the Master Grade Phaz, I think is also very likely if they do end up making a full armor Double Zeta. Then a Phaz, which is basically just a color swap and different parts for the head for the most part. So that would be awesome. I really hope that they do make that. I would love to pick up the heavy weapons or the full armor set for this. Love that huge cannon that thing has. That would be awesome to have in a nice new Master Grade form. But we'll just have to wait and see. I have built the original old Master Grade Phaz, and it's not that great. I mean, the big huge cannon is awesome, but the kit itself could definitely use an update. So hopefully we'll see that in the future. We'll just have to wait and see. If you do have any other further questions, comments, anything about this kit, let me know down below. Again, thank you to USA Gundam Store. Thank you to you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Hey! Thanks for watching, guys. Remember, if you want to check the kit out for yourself, you can head over to USA Gundam Store. Use that coupon code ZakuAurelius10. Save yourself 10%. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time. Bye-bye.